A Boeing 777 is 64 meters long. It weighs almost 200 tons empty. It does not fit in a closet, a warehouse, or a lake. In an age when a phone in your pocket can be located to within a few meters from space, one of these aircraft, carrying 239 people, flew off the edge of every tracking system built to watch it, and has not been found for over 12 years. Not a piece of the fuselage, not the black boxes, not the 2 flight recorders that were built specifically to survive exactly this. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 disappeared on March 8, 2014. It remains the largest, most expensive search in the history of aviation. In January 2026, the most advanced deep-sea search technology ever deployed for this case came back with nothing, again. And this past June, Malaysia extended the hunt for another year, through 2027. So the question isn't really, what happened to MH370? At this point, it's stranger than that. How does something this big, in a world watched this closely, simply not get found? MH370 left Kuala Lumpur at 12:41 a.m. on March 8, 2014, bound for Beijing with 227 passengers and 12 crew. 38 minutes in, as the flight was handed off from Malaysian to Vietnamese air traffic control, the last voice transmission from the cockpit came through. Good night, Malaysian 370. Almost immediately after, the aircraft's transponder, the system that broadcast identity and altitude to civilian radar, went dark. To everyone watching a screen, the plane had simply stopped existing. But it hadn't stopped flying. Military radar picked it up doing something no one expected, turning sharply west, crossing back over the Malaysian peninsula, and heading up the Strait of Malacca, the opposite direction from Beijing. The last radar contact placed it near the Andaman Sea at 2:22 a.m. Malaysia Airlines didn't tell the public any of this. Their first statement, issued nearly 5 hours after contact was lost, said the plane had gone missing over the South China Sea, the original flight path. It hadn't been there for hours. Here's where it gets genuinely strange. Radar lost the aircraft, but a British satellite company called Inmarsat hadn't. MH370's satellite communication unit kept automatically answering routine hourly handshake pings from an Inmarsat satellite. Not messages, not location data, just a background check-in signal, the electronic equivalent of a phone quietly staying connected to a cell tower. The last one came at 8:19 a.m., nearly 7 hours after the plane vanished from radar, meaning it had kept flying under some form of control for hours after the world lost track of it. Inmarsat's engineers realized, after the fact, that they could extract rough position data from these pings anyway, using the tiny time delay and frequency shift of each signal, an engineering byproduct never designed for tracking anything. It was enough to calculate a curved line of possible final positions, the seventh arc, stretching across the southern Indian Ocean. No radar, no satellite photo, no distress call, just 7 pings and math, and it's still the best lead anyone has. Australia led a search across 120,000 square kilometers of seabed in the Indian Ocean, costing roughly $150 million over nearly 3 years. It found nothing and was suspended in January 2017. In 2018, a private firm, Ocean Infinity, covered another 112,000 square kilometers under a no-find, no-fee deal. Also nothing. The ocean wasn't wrong, though. In July 2015, a barnacle-encrusted wing flaperon washed ashore on Réunion Island, thousands of kilometers away, and was confirmed as MH370 debris. Over the following years, roughly 30 more fragments turned up on beaches across Mozambique, South Africa, and Mauritius. The debris proved the plane really had gone down in the Indian Ocean, exactly where the math said it would. It just didn't say where on an ocean floor covering an area larger than the search zone that had already come up empty. In 2018, a 19-member international investigation team released its final report. Its conclusion, stated plainly, they could not determine the cause. What they could say was stranger. The course change appeared to have been flown manually, not on autopilot. The communication systems appeared to have been switched off in a sequence that investigators called more consistent with deliberate action than mechanical failure. And separately, it emerged that the captain, Zahari Ahmad Shah, had plotted a route on his home flight simulator 6 weeks earlier that was, in the investigators' words, initially similar to the path the plane actually flew. That single detail has powered a decade of theories. But it deserves the full picture, not just the headline. Malaysian police's own forensic review of that same simulator found no other unusual activity beyond what they described as ordinary flight simulation use. And the lead investigator told reporters directly that the team was not of the opinion the pilots caused the disappearance, while also not ruling out interference by someone else entirely. 12 years on, that's still the official position. Someone, or something, changed this plane's course on purpose. Nobody has ever been named. Nothing has ever been confirmed. There's an actual clinical term for what MH370 did to the people who lost someone on it: ambiguous loss. It's a concept from psychologist Pauline Boss, describing grief with no confirmation and no remains, where the mind can't complete mourning because it never gets the one fact grief is built around: proof. Families of the 239 people on board have spent over a decade in exactly that gap, unable to hold a funeral that means what a funeral is supposed to mean. It isn't only the families either. Psychologists have a separate term: need for cognitive closure, for how uncomfortable people generally are with unresolved information, full stop. An unfinished story doesn't just sit there quietly in the brain. It actively pulls attention back toward it, which is a large part of why an aviation case from 2014 still generates documentaries, forums, and new theories in 2026. The mystery isn't just about a missing plane. It's a live demonstration of what happens to human beings, individually and collectively, when reality declines to hand over an ending. In 2025, Malaysia authorized Ocean Infinity to try again, in a newly identified 15,000 square kilometer zone selected using updated drift modeling, including a genuinely clever piece of forensic science, analyzing the chemical growth layers in barnacle shells found on the original debris, since barnacles record the ocean temperatures they drift through the way tree rings record years, potentially working backward toward a point of origin. The search ran in 2 phases, March 2025 and December 2025 into January 2026, covering about 7,571 square kilometers. On March 8, 2026, the 12th anniversary of the disappearance, Malaysia's Air Accident Investigation Bureau confirmed to families that it had, again, found nothing conclusive. Voice 370, the association representing victims' families, responded the way it has for over a decade. We will continue the search for MH370, and we will continue the fight for answers. This past June, Malaysia's cabinet approved another extension, this time through June 2027, so Ocean Infinity can finish the roughly 7,400 square kilometers left inside the current zone, a no-find, no-fee arrangement, meaning Malaysia owes nothing unless the aircraft is actually located. As of right now, the search for MH370 is legally active, funded, and scheduled to keep going through the middle of 2027. That's the part that makes this different from most unsolved mysteries. This one isn't cold. It's an open case, with a ship, a contract, and a deadline, more than 12 years after it started. Somewhere in over 200,000 square kilometers of ocean already searched, and however much more hasn't been, the answer to one of the most advanced tracking failures in modern history is still sitting on the seafloor, waiting on the one thing that's outlasted every satellite, every theory, and every search vessel sent after it: to actually be found.